Our topic today is really yummy. Soul intimacy, intimate relationship as a path to evolution. So I am just dying to know, why is it so important at this time, this particular moment, that we tend to our primary relationships?
Thank you, Kathy. I was really excited that you invited me on here, and I'd been feeling so much recently because a lot of the work we do here is with couples, and and at the moment, couples everywhere. I mean, a lot of couples are having an amazing time through the experience of lockdown and
Right.
the normal distractions that take us away from intimacy. You know, sometimes for a lot of us, it's like, I just don't have time to be with my partner because I'm so busy working, I'm so busy doing life. And so there's been some really beautiful and amazing stories of couples who were just rekindling amazing connection in their relationship. But equally, there are many couples that have been coming forwards and really struggling at this time, really struggling because often if the relationship has difficulties and cracks in it, the busyness of life becomes a very handy distraction, shall we say, or a way to just move away from that. I don't want to face that. I don't want to go there. I don't want to look at it. But there's all this other stuff going on in my life. So I'll just immerse myself in that and meet the needs for connection and joy and peace and ease and all of those things. So I wanted to speak to this because I present on a lot of summits and very few people are speaking about relationship, and especially relationship contextualized with what's going on in our world right now. And so much of what is going on in our world right now is about division and opposition. And of course, I'm sure any of us who've been in a relationship in our life understand how division and opposition can very often come into that very primary intimate relationship. And that's what we're seeing happen a lot, is that what is happening out there in the field of our collective consciousness is happening in the micro, in here, in our living rooms and bedrooms and kitchens. And of course, what is happening here in our homes, in our living room, bedrooms and kitchens, in our primary relationships, becomes the ripple that moves out into the collective field. So they're completely intertwined. They're completely intertwined. And the resistance to work with the opposition or to position ourselves within one polarity of the opposition only amplifies the field of opposition.
Right. Wow, it does.
So as I see it, where we are at, this is my personal take on it. Everyone's got their own personal take, so I'll just throw mine in just for fun because, why not? That for me, what I sense happening is humanity's consciousness is the sickness that we are really asking to face. We're being asked to face the sickness of our humanity, of our unconsciousness, of our disconnect from nature, of our disconnect from the mystery, from all that is sacred, our disconnect from our bodies, and primarily our disconnect from what I would call spirit, but I like to call it love. Love in the biggest sense of the word. Like, love is everything physical manifesting creation is an expression of love. It's an expression of spirit. Every blade of grass, every drop of rain, every flower that blossoms, like everything is this expression of love, or we might say the mystery. And of course, we all, so many of us reach for relationship in our life because we want the experience of what it feels like to be in the state of love, vibrating in the frequency of love. And it seems to me that what's happening on planet Earth at the moment is we've lost our way with love. We've been living from a power structure. We've been living from separation. We've been living from domination and submission and control of the natural world, trying to rise above all of that stuff that we all know. And the pathway, I feel that's opening up to us is a return to love. And of course, with so much death and suffering around, what is the opposite of death and suffering? It's love.
Right.
It's aliveness. It's all that's precious. It's beauty. It's only until we're on our deathbed, or until the vulnerability of physical illness and the threat of our life being taken from us, that our hearts really, really open. Or when we lose a relationship. I mean, often that's when people most meet their grief, is loss of a loved one or the end of a relationship. And then suddenly all the losses that we'd never been able to let ourselves touch, they all come flooding to the fore, but it seems like it's about this relationship. So linking in how relationship is so fundamental at the moment, because it's a way in which we can very directly access our heart and love. Because what pulls us into relationship? It's the promise of this incredible experience of being in love, of feeling alive, of having mind-blowing sex, of feeling really accepted and cherished and precious. And those moments, when you have one of those moments of really sweet intimacy where you just feel like, wow, in this moment, I'm completely content and there's nowhere else I want to be. And my heart feels wide open. It's almost like in that moment, we inhabit who we really are. And we have that sweetness of, oh yeah, I remember who I am. And because all romantic images are always nature-based. They're always about the stars or the ocean at night or the rising moon or the setting sun or a sweet moment by a babbling brook, or it's never like on top of an office block on a Formica counter, with a it's generally always something to do with beauty, because beauty, I believe, is absolutely fundamental to our evolution. And it's the thing that we're stripping back so that what is this, we just go, well, what's essential in life? What's the functionality of life? How can we destroy and control anything that is our threat and make life as efficient as possible? How efficient can we get? And in that efficiency, we lose the experience of simply being in the beauty and the mystery and the preciousness and the sweetness of life. And that's why I feel that we're in the mess we're in. Right. It's because we have disconnected ourselves. It's like our whole value system is around money and capital growth and personal power and personal wealth and all of that stuff. And none of those things truly sustain us and give us that I've just been speaking to. It might touch on it in some way and give us the illusion of it, but it's very temporary. So this intimate relationship is such a powerful portal to immediately access that place of the mystery, of beauty, of love, through the eyes of the beloved. When we have that precious moment and say we're outside, maybe we've gone for a walk somewhere and we have that moment and our hearts open and suddenly we're aware of the beauty all around us. Whereas yesterday we might have been in that exact same place and not seen the beauty. But we see it today because through this portal of intimacy, everything opens up. So I see at the moment, so much of our work that we're doing is supporting couples. And it's exciting because the couples work has always been, for me, a spiritual practice. Right. So the way we tend to see spiritual practice, is like, well, I've got my meditation practice, I've got my yoga practice, I've got my solo walking practice, I've got my dance practice, I've whatever it might be. But generally speaking, it's something that we do for ourselves, which of course is fantastic. We need to do that. We need to take those times and have those practices. But we don't often see relationship as a spiritual practice. It's like we think, well, if I go and do
Right.
my spiritual practice, I'll then be able to come and do relationship, which is true.
Right.
However, is it not also true that in the mirror of our beloved, just by them being their natural, wonderful, irritating self, all of those wounds, what I would call our core primal love wounds, all get activated. So when our partner reflects back to us that we're amazing and that we're beautiful and that we're cherished and that we're loved, and it's like, if we can let that in, we just feel amazing and we feel filled up, and then we want more and we want more, and then we become dependent. And of course, that same partner 5 minutes later goes, well, I think you're being a bit, or I don't like what you're doing or being right now. And suddenly, oh my goodness, all the pain, all the, oh, you've rejected me, I feel abandoned, I'm hurting, you think that I'm this, you think that I'm that, and then it all kicks off. So in that way, relationship is a potent spiritual practice. There is no other spiritual practice with such rocket fuel as intimate relationship, because there's no let up. If you're in a relationship and you're cohabiting with someone 24/7, unless they're going out to work, you know, in your face all day, it's like, oh, there they are again,
Right.
showing me just by being who they are, where I am out of connection with beauty, with the sacred, with love, with all that's precious, with deep respect and honor for life as sacred, for myself as sacred, for love as the guiding force. It's like in those moments, all of that is gone, and they are there to mirror that back to us. But we don't generally go, oh, let me do that then, and let me have a look. We go, well, if you would be different, I would be at peace. I would then feel all right. That's the fundamental kind of dance that we get into. Or if I could be different, because I'm the problem, then we could be at peace, and I could be at peace, because I'm obviously not enough and I must try harder, you know, and all of these dynamics and dances that play out between us. But ultimately, that intimacy is a path to our own evolution. If we choose to receive it that way, if we decide to take that pathway to say, when my partner triggers me, when my partner irritates me, when my partner does X, Y, Z, that stirs something in me, can I come into that intimacy with myself and put my arms around the place in me that has been exiled outside of that circle of love, that has forgotten that I am embedded in this most incredible mystery of sacred, beautiful love that is just infused in every cell of me. How can I come back to that? Because that's what they're pointing me to. And once we step on that path, it's a path that, in a way, it's like the more authentic honeymoon phase, because the honeymoon phase has that, but it's based on an agreement that we will only show each other the beautiful mirror.
Right.
Yeah. We don't say it like that, but that's kind of what we're doing. And then our mirrors break and the other flip side of the mirror gets shown, and we're like, no, I don't want to see that side of the mirror. You promised to only ever show me this side of the mirror. But if we can stay at that point, there's something really precious there, because that first version of the honeymoon phase, it is an awakening and a remembering of who we truly are, but it's not integrated because it is only the mirror of the light. So we need to be able to integrate the mirror of the darkness in us and those exiled places and include them and bring them all into love. So if at that point where we go, oh, well, actually, I've made a mistake, you're not the beloved after all, because you are pointing my wounds out, and I thought that the agreement was that we go into a relationship and we wouldn't point each other's wounds out by being who we are. We either move on or we stay and we just continue in this circulating drama of trying to get ourselves or the other to change in order to make it all right. Or we recognize, actually, Where in me have I lost this sacred connection? And that's my work. Now, you've got a beautiful path of intimacy opening up, which is really rooted in something deep and real, and in my experience goes far beyond anything that the honeymoon phase can offer. And in a way, I feel that's the call to couples right now, because given everything that's going on in the world, and so many of us talking about loneliness and disconnect, and I just need a hug, and it's like our bodies, we're tribal connected creatures, and when we are with other human beings, even if we don't touch, our hearts start to beat together, our hormones change, our pineal glands open, our pulse rate changes, our body creates a whole bioresonance every time. There's so much communication going on with the microbiome of us on every level, our chakras, our auras, our energy fields. And when that's not happening, that's serious, because something happens to us at the level of our consciousness that means it's going to impair our capacity to move forwards in evolution. Right. So there's many levels, but just at that level, making our intimate relationships work is a kind of core sort of food, shelter, water of the soul, you might say. Right. That we have that basic remembering of that connection, and that we are here to evolve. That is fundamentally the threshold that we are on, is to evolve and to awaken as a species. And it looks to me that we're right on this precipice. And if we use the mirror of what happens in our relationship, we hit that point where the mirror of wonderfulness, it's like we've just been in this great party for the last 600 years, and it's just been like, wow, we can have everything whenever we want and as much as we want, and yay. And now it's almost like, oh, this isn't looking good. We've run out of beer. Right. This party has run out of beer. What are we going to do? Yeah. Right. And at this point, this is where there's a choice point. And in relationship, this is where we often walk away, or hunker down and switch off but stay in the relationship, or get into lots of fighting. But actually, if we work on this in the intimate relationship, that as a frequency does something to the field. Because I think most couples that we speak to would say, when the relationship is going well, everything else in our life is a little bit more manageable and actually feels a little bit more abundant and peaceful and harmonious. When the relationship is not going well, everything just feels just like it's 20% harder than it was before. Right. So the relation, and often couples will say, oh, well, we haven't got time to connect. We haven't got time to get support. We haven't got the resources to get support. We're too, we've got to survive. Mm-hmm. And I'm always with this question, well, yes, but what is the nature of this survive? Because if your relationship is thriving and you are operating in a frequency of bioresonant love with the divine, with mystery, that is a powerful, rejuvenating energy. That means you can then be with this shifting consciousness, go out into the world and do what you do, tend to your children, provide for them, and all of those things that we need to be doing.
Wow. So I'm going to ask the question, because this was, we could stop right here. That was just like the epitome, and thank you for that beautiful mirror of what's really happening on this planet. But I'm going to ask, what role does sex have to play in all of this?
Yes. Now we've got to my favorite subject. Right. So, I think to say where I'm coming from with sexuality, and this is from my own lifelong exploration of my own sexuality, and also, explorations that I've done, different traditions, different explorations working with people. To me, the energy of sex, or we could say sexual energy or sacred erotic energy, is the source energy of life. It is love. Ultimately, it's the energy of love and consciousness coming together.
Mm-hmm.
We could say the masculine and the feminine, but I know those words are just, they're too misunderstood, they're too narrow, but we could say that in some way, just to point to it, that when consciousness and love meet, some alchemy happens. And we don't necessarily see sex that way, and we definitely don't necessarily experience it that way. We can have sex and be completely disconnected and simply feel it as a, at best, a sort of bodily sensation that feels lovely for a moment. Or we can have sexual intimacy, this is with ourselves or with another, that includes our heart. And now we bring in vulnerability. Now we bring in something of the sacred. Now we bring in something of love. And sexual energy is now alchemized and transforms into love. And that's a powerful force. If you've ever had the kind of sex, even if it's only ever once in your life, I pray that everybody's had it at least once, the kind of sex where you're just like, what just happened? That is the most mind-blowing experience I've ever had. That was better than any drugs I ever took, or that was the most open I've ever been, or that was the most inspired I've ever felt. That was the most in love I've ever, that's the most open my heart ever was, or that was the most energy I've ever felt in my body. That was the most connected I've ever felt. Those moments where we just remember that we are the mystery. And sex is a portal to that. Sex is sacred. I mean, we've reduced sex to a currency, to a business exchange. Women have been taught for thousands of years to use sex to get love, to get holding, to get what they need to survive. But sex is actually, it's such a sacred energy, and it's source creative energy. So if we were all having the kind of sex I just talked about, can you imagine how inspired we would feel, and how expanded we would feel, and how awakened we would feel, and how that would impact the world that we're in? It would completely transform.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I think we get called to sex, to intimacy, to be lovers with someone, because there's always this whisper of a promise that it could be that. Now, of course, lots and lots of times it isn't that, but that whisper still calls us, that eternal whisper of, I don't believe it's just by coincidence that at that moment when we have an orgasm, we go, oh God. That's often a word that's said, like, oh God, or something that points to that sort of, something bigger than me is happening here. I'm just totally surrendered. There's nothing I can do. It's just that moment where death becomes ecstatic. It's like a sort of a spiritual death and a spiritual awakening all combined into a moment. And that portal, if we can work with that portal deliberately and use it as like a rocket fuel for transformation. And menopausal women have a very key role to play in that, but that's for another time. But
wow. Just a wealth of information. So I'm really curious. Talk to us. Your approach with couples can be very unusual. So talk about soul intimacy and what you mean by that, and how you work with couples.
Yeah, I mean, I think, a fair bit of what I'm saying, I'm pointing to it, and hopefully you're getting the kind of sense of what I'm pointing to, that this is not therapy as in working at the level of our humanity. So when we're born, we come in, and then we have our primary caregivers who, even with the best well-intentioned kind of attempts to parent us, we're all going to fuck it up one way or another. It's imprinted in the ancestral kind of, destiny. But we get this primal imprint of what I call, the great mother wound and the great father wound. the wounding or the core messaging that we receive from the wounded father and from the wounded mother. And this isn't to blame anybody. This isn't to say, oh, the mothers, it's all their fault, or all the fathers, it's all their fault. This is something that's happening in the collective field that no one person is responsible for. We are all product to what's been passed down this ancestral lineage. And so for me, soul intimacy is understanding that when we come into relationship, we're not just looking to soothe the human hurt that exists within us, which I've just pointed to. But we're here in this intimacy to remember who we actually are as soul spirit beings. Everything that I've just been talking about, to remember that we are an embodiment of love, and that actually we're here to expand our consciousness, to experience beauty, to experience the divine and the mystery in every given moment. That is why we're here. An intimate relationship is a very intimate and potent way in which we can experience that, which is different to oh, I'm triggered. When you say, do the washing up, I feel really wounded. I feel really rejected. I feel like you don't care about me. Well, when you say I don't care about you, I feel like I'm not lovable. All of that stuff is important, but all it's really doing is shuffling the deck of our personality structure and getting a slightly better arrangement in the codependent agreement that we make. Which is, you promise to love me unconditionally and accept me, and you promise and today you're not doing that, and I'm upset about it. Whereas soul intimacy keeps inviting us back to something that is beyond just the level of the wounds of our humanity, to a consciousness that sits outside of that sits in the cosmos, that sits in the stars, that sits in the sun. And a love that is beyond our human love, which inevitably is conditional. But the place in us that can step beyond that and feel ourselves held and guided by something bigger. And in the work with couples, what we find again and again is that there's just this huge relief when they hear that, because they've often spent years trying to reshuffle the deck of cards and get a slightly better arrangement. So in this way, the commitment that we're making when we're in a relationship, one says, oh, I want to go deeper, I want to commit, I want to get married, I want to live together, that commitment. We say, I want you to commit to me. And that's quite scary for a lot of people. Like, oh no, I feel trapped. Or what do you mean? What am I going to do? All of that. And the one who's saying, I want the commitment, it can be from that human wound of like, well, I'm so afraid of abandonment that if you commit to never leaving me, then that young place in me can relax. But of course, it never feels really, truly relaxed, because it's based on a promise of something external to you. And you're very powerless. You've got to work hard all the time to make sure they stay. Whereas if you make your commitment to love, and you are both devoted and in service to tending to love, that's a very different commitment. So if you say that the relationship is a garden of love, then the two people in the relationship are gardeners, and the quest is to become expert gardeners of love, so that you can reside in the garden of love as much as possible. And that's very liberating, because then when your partner is saying whatever, blah, 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 or you're in the kind of, those moments, the question is, what does love guide me to right now? What does love want? And that might be an act of self-protection. Say, you know what, right now I can't open to you. It's actually dangerous, maybe even abusive, or just I've got loads of projections going on and it doesn't feel safe. So an act of love might guide you to say, I need to take myself off and hold and cherish the part in me that's hurting, rather than hand it over to you to look after and try and soothe, which you're probably not going to do the way I want you to.
Right.
Or, Or love might guide me in saying, well, you know, I don't want to give up my position right now of being right. You know, that argument we were having, well, I'm right, you know, and I didn't say that, and I know I didn't, and you're the one that's, you know, or whatever version it might be. And it's like, what does love, what's the highest love guiding me? Not in service to them, but in service to myself, to my own evolution, to my own awakening. That's what's really key in all of this. It is never for the other. It is truly for ourselves. And in that for ourselves, it is a gift to the other. So it's not selfish, but it's a different way of loving the other.
Absolutely. Wow. So talk to us about nature and nature as a teacher to us.
Yes.
When we talk about intimacy.
Yeah. So those moments that I was speaking about earlier on, those moments where we just feel our hearts so wide open. In those moments first of all, where do those moments most happen? In my experience, they often happen more when we're surrounded by beauty, when we're surrounded by nature, where we're surrounded by a sense of something expansive, bigger than us. And even if those moments happen in, I don't know, you know, a sort of, I was going to say a public toilet, but that's not what it's a terrible example. Somewhere very artificial. I was trying to think of somewhere, I don't know, you know, in a car, something very unnatural, you know. It's like we immediately want to go and reside somewhere beautiful. It's like, let's go for a walk on a beach. Let's go up for the mountain today. Let's go and walk in the park. Let's go, you know, look at these flowers. They're amazing. So nature is showing us all the time how to return to love, how to return to this sense of beauty. And when I mean beauty, I really mean it in the deepest sense of the word. You know, beauty is like food for our soul, and it's as important as food. It's as important as food. And we know this from research. You know, if you remember back in, was it the 80s with the Romanian babies, and how they'd been stripped away from any beauty, any touch, any beauty in their environment. And their environment was very sterile, plastic floor, concrete walls, you know, metal cot. And their souls were just shriveling away, you know, and it wasn't the food that was doing that, because they were being fed. They were being fed their essential food and water. That wasn't enough. What they needed was touch, was beauty, was air. Like when we breathe that in, it's like when I go for a walk in the forest, I know that there's something happening in my body that is beyond anything I might be able to even feel a lot of the time. But my whole soul being, my cells are having a conversation with the mystery. You know, when I'm there looking up at the stars at night, I know that there's a conversation going on with my body, with my soul, with my cells, with my bones, that is beyond anything my cognitive mind can understand. And that is what's happening in those moments of intimacy. It's very hard to describe those moments. You know, you ask someone to describe that when it's like, I don't know, I just felt this way. And that's the point. So nature plays a really, really key role. If you imagine trying to have a relationship where you never are surrounded by beauty, how much harder is it going to be to have the kind of intimacy and the kind of beautiful lovemaking that I've just described? How is that going to be possible?
Right.
It's going to be very difficult. And if you do it, you're going to have to go into a very, very small world to try and feel the energy that's just encapsulated in the space that you've created. But as soon as you expand out beyond it, wow, here I am in a concrete high rise. Well, now I've lost the connection, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Wow, Jewels. So I want you to put in a nutshell for us, because this has just been nourishing. It's been soul food just listening to you. So, what would you say as your parting gift, your parting words to our listeners about intimacy and connecting with their primary partner, especially right now?
Yeah.
What would you want to leave them with?
Yeah, I think what I'm seeing and the work that we're doing is helping couples to recognize that it's expected that at this time relationship is going to feel challenging, that there's every good reason why relationship is going to feel challenging. There's everything going against supporting relationship to flourish. And so, number one, you haven't failed. It's not a disaster. It doesn't necessarily mean there's something that broken that can't be mended. It's just there's so many forces that we're up against, and particularly this energy of opposition that is operating in the collective consciousness, which is actually increasing. And I think it might even increase more before it finds its shift of change. And how that opposition is going to start playing out in the intimacy of the relationship, and to try not to get caught in that, to try to get the witness, as I call it, the one who can step outside and go, look at us in opposition. Do you see we're in opposition? We're each holding a polarity. And what can we find that unites us rather than what divides us? And one very simple practice, which is absolutely simple and everybody can do it, but it is one of the most radical practices in terms of shifting relationship, is practice of gratitude. Now, of course, if you're having, a month-long standoff argument with your partner and you're, I hate you, and ignoring each other, and you're like ships in the night, the last thing you want to do is give them gratitude. It's like, you gotta be kidding me. I don't want to do that, There is nothing I feel grateful for, and but actually, the act of offering gratitude is an act of self-love. And it's an act of that shifting consciousness. It says, I'm willing to step outside of my own personality level of conditioning and acknowledge that I'm grateful that actually you're still here. I'm grateful that you put the toothbrush back in the cup last night. I'm grateful that whatever, the smallest of things can, like you think, well, it's just a small thing, but to them it might feel like 90%, because so much of the things that we do, we take for granted, and we don't just name those things. So the act of gratitude, especially when things are hard, like often me and my partner are arguing, or we're guiding a couple, and I said, just let's press pause and let's just give one appreciation in this moment. We can carry on arguing afterwards, and we can carry on throwing swords and going off insults and everything. But let's just give one gratitude. And just that means that something in the heart just, I don't want to, but it's not for the other, it's for ourselves. It's absolutely for ourselves. It's like we've just given ourselves sort of soul chocolate.
Right.
So it's tending the soil. It's like putting compost on the soil of this garden. And it's a very simple thing, and it takes fierce discipline to do it, but it's profoundly transformational, and it's simple.
Yeah. Jewels, thank you. Oh my goodness, thank you for your wisdom. This has been yummy, just like I knew it would be. So if there are couples out there that hear this, how can they find you?
Well, they can find us in the Forest of Dean, up a track about a mile away. But that is where all the work's happening. So we have a year-long program for couples, which is an amazing. It's called Revolutionary Love, and it's all about revolutionary love, and being with this collective shift, but through the gateway of this intimate relationship. And we take couples on this amazing journey through a whole year, and they come here for residential modules. And you don't just get the learning from me and my partner. It's like the circle, the whole experience becomes like profound, juicy, enriched learning and transformation. And that begins in March, I think. I can't remember, something like that, March 2021.
Wow.
And obviously we also have a private practice, so we work with couples in a more private way and I would say that my passion, actually, where I work best, and this sounds really strange to say, but the more couples are struggling, the better I am.
Yeah, I can see that.
It's just some curse of a gift I've got. So if you're really, really stuck, then I'm your woman.
Right, for sure you are. Thank you so much, Jewels. It's been a delight once again.
Thank you,
and
Kathy.
We so appreciate you bringing all of this juicy wisdom to our awareness. I think you nailed it. I really think this is what we're up against. So thank you for sharing.
Oh, good to see you, Kathy.
Good to see you.
Bye.